Rural Heritage on RFD TV is brought to you by Rural Heritage Magazine, a bi-monthly magazine featuring articles about farming and logging with draft animal power, small-scale diversified family farming and homesteading, and other aspects of our rich rural heritage. Rural Heritage Magazine, borrowing from yesterday to do the work of today. For subscription information, please call 319-362-3027 or order online at www.ruralheritage.com. For a lot of us who've attended Horse Progress Days over the years, the voice of Dale Stoltzfus coming over the loudspeakers during the popular field demonstrations is a very familiar sound. This year, because of the COVID-19 pandemic, Horse Progress Days were canceled. I stopped by to visit with Dale when I was passing through Pennsylvania this summer.
My background, my great-grandfather was Amish until he was an adult, and then he started a new church that it was still basically Amish, although they drove cars and had telephones, and they dressed Amish and they wore beards and they had the same kind of basic theology, but it's called the Amish Mennonites or the Beachy Amish. It comes by a variety of names. That's what he joined. And then my parents joined the Mennonite church when they got married, and my wife and I are still members of the Mennonite church. But yes, I grew up here in Lancaster County, and my address growing up on Creek Hill Road was Lancaster, but we lived right outside of the town of Leola, and now our address here is Leola as well. We've been here almost, well, since '78. How many years is that? 40-some. I'm an enigma in my family in terms of horses.
Okay.
There's no tradition there, I must say, unfortunately.
Until you go back far enough that everybody...
Yeah, right, exactly. Yeah, my grandfather, yeah, and my dad when he was young, of course. But my dad's stories about horses and mules were all stories of how afraid he was of them, how afraid they made him, and the intractable ones that they had to use sometimes, and how they had a pair of mules that when he was a young boy out cultivating the tobacco or the corn or whatever, if the noon bell rang, there was a bell. We have a bell tower in our house too, but the bell tower rang, and if you were in the middle of the row somewhere, that mule would not go to the end of the row. You were headed for home when that bell rang. Things like that. He told a story about having the hay sickle bar mower down. I don't know if he had it down. I don't know why the bar was down. He was headed out to the field, and the mules or horses started to run away and went through the gate, you know, and the sickle bar caught, and that caused a big wreck. And all those are the kinds of stories I grew up with, but didn't somehow I was, I don't know what, bullheaded or determined or naive enough to follow through with my own interest in horses. My dad we would plant maybe half the farm in corn and half in alfalfa, hay probably. And well, sometimes we raised some Sudan grass too to green chop for the cows. That really made a lot of milk in the spring. But the corn then, a certain point, well, first of all, you know, you chop, the corn has to be a little bit green when you chop it for silage because it has to have some moisture in it so it packs together. So we would we had trenches. We didn't have silos. We had a trench right out behind the barn. We would fill the trenches first, and then whatever corn was left would get picked. So some years when you had lots of rain and good growing season, you would have lots of corn. Other years, you might not have as much ear corn. And I know there were times when we did have to buy some ear corn too. And when I was young, we didn't have a barn cleaner. I remember many mornings, Saturday mornings especially, when I didn't have to go to school, and you know, I had to clean out the barn. And I remember one or two seasons, but probably especially one, when I was just at the age where I learned to ice skate, and we had a lot of cold weather that year, and the neighbor kids would come and ice skate on the pond, you know, and I had to watch them down there skating while I was cleaning out the barn. That was hard, but I got it done and then joined them. Didn't hurt me a bit. I worked with a co-op called Oasis at Bird in Hand here for a few years, launching it, getting it launched. It's still in business. It went through some very difficult times, almost closed its doors. We tried to do too much. We tried to do produce, meat, eggs, the whole diet, and it was too much. And we were all, none of us were, we were all green and new to what we were trying to do pretty much. But the dairy part of it is still going. And I, through that experience, learned a tremendous amount about growing things, about the soil, and about the earth, and it just makes me long for a time when we, as a people, could view ourselves as partners to the earth and the soil, and with humility and respect, and try to learn as much as we can about how microbes break each other down and provide food for plants, and that incredible cycle, which, you know, animal manure is a vital part of, or can be a vital part of. Even human manure. I mean, we have this incredible system at our disposal, which we're not using. We're so much smarter. We are right now in an incredible time of opportunity to, and you know, sometimes we take ourselves too seriously and we try too hard, almost, it seems. This gift, if you will, has come to us by way of this pandemic that we're experiencing. Right now, anyone who is doing on-farm production, selling right off the farm, and is closely connected to the consumer, is going nuts. There's not enough. The systems that we have that you're just describing are breaking down, have broken down, and it's an incredible opportunity. And some of our local farmers are recognizing it. And when you're talking about, you described what happened in Iowa to your farms. We have a similar thing going on here in some ways, even in the Amish community, because of the dairy situation. So dairy farming, the unfortunate thing about milk is that just in January, February, and early March, prices were on the upswing. And now with this disruption to the system that we just talked about, it doesn't make sense, because there's still, the demand is still there, but the system isn't working, and prices have come down. And for the last 2-3 years before this, dairy farm after dairy farm has sold their cows. There are so many opportunities for good paying construction jobs. The economy is booming, and farmers, Amish farmers, have left their cow stables go empty, and they've gone into other avenues of work. And so now we have acres and acres, thousands of acres in Lancaster County here, I would say, that are being farmed by custom operators. Farmers, you know, with big equipment running up and down the road to this farm and that farm, and they're Amish farms. This is unprecedented in my lifetime. Every farm that came available in Lancaster County and surrounding counties for the last 60 or whatever years in my lifetime has been taken up by an Amish farmer. If there was no one else, you know, if no one else wanted to farm it, the Amish were always there to farm it. Now the Amish are renting out their farms. And furthermore, if there was an Amish-owned farm and the farmer got old enough and didn't have a son or daughter or son-in-law to take over the farm, another young couple came and farmed. And the dairy industry was just there. The milk, you know, the buyers were just there. They were there, but they're not anymore. And that's because of consolidation and a lot of different factors. So right now in Lancaster County, there's acres and acres of land that will need to be, somebody needs to decide what to do with. And the easiest thing is to rent it for, what, $400 an acre or whatever to a custom operator. But the opportunity for filling this void that we have now with good crops from Lancaster County to surrounding, I mean, we're within 2.5 hours of New York City. We're within an hour of Philadelphia or less. We're within an hour or a little bit more to Baltimore, 2 to 2.5 to Washington, D.C., millions of people. And here we sit with this good dirt to grow things. We don't need to buy them from all over the rest of the creation.
Right.
They're right here.
Right.
So it'll be interesting to see how this whole thing, I've been meeting with a group of Amish just to keep their minutes, who were assigned by the bishops of Lancaster County to see what they could do, if they could do anything, or what they could do to bolster dairy farming, but farming in whatever way in Lancaster County. And so there's some interesting things sort of brewing.
That's exciting.
It is exciting, and I'm real eager to look back, if I live long enough, in a few years, to see, you know, what came out of it. But keep your eyes and ears open, and anything we can do to enhance or sustain it or encourage it, I think is extremely important. This pandemic has handed a gift to that kind of farming, and I just it's shined a light on it. Right. I hope we can recognize it and utilize the gift, or appreciate the gift and grow it for others.
No, I think that you're right.
This might be a good time for me to say on the record how much I appreciate your magazine and the approach that you're taking. It's very important. And then you have a unique approach to it, probably compared to anyone else who's writing about it, and that is because of the animal traction that you promote in your magazine. And that's a really, I think it can be and should be a very important part of it. I mean, because it fits so well with the whole package. It's another gift. I mean, can you think of a better gift than something for, performing a job that can replace itself and that can provide fertilizer? I mean, it's such an incredible.
Right. Hi, I'm Joe Mishka of Rural Heritage Magazine. I'm on location of one of the many events we cover that celebrates our rural heritage. If you enjoy our show, check out our magazine, where you'll learn more about the people that blend the past with what works today. You can save almost 20% off the newsstand price by subscribing at ruralheritage.com or chat with us at 877-647-2452. That's toll-free, 877-647-2452. Horse Progress Days, were you there from the very beginning?
No. I heard about it. It started out here at Elmer Lapp's farm. Elmer Lapp was a mentor to me in some ways. We went to the same church growing up. He was at one point my Sunday school teacher. He and me and the rest of my boy Sunday school people, I remember camping out at his farm at least once, maybe more than once. His farm was like a magnet to me when I was a kid. It was like a magic place. Peacocks, Belgian horses, Guernsey cows, collie dogs, and at one point he had this old spring house that he had water running through, which had all kinds of fish in it.
Really?
Yeah, when I was just real little.
Wow.
And of course, to me, the horse part of it was a huge attraction. There was no one else in my circles, no one, who came anywhere close to the intrigue that I felt for his farm and his place and him. And so, yeah, I heard about it, and I was there for the first day of the first year, but then our family had a vacation planned over that weekend, so I had to leave, go to the beach or something, and then I wasn't involved when it went from here then to Ohio and Indiana. But then when it was coming back to Pennsylvania, I had been, of course, watching the reports. Morris Tilleen, of course, in his magazine did some glowing reports, which I think were very, very key in bolstering in the Giraffe Horse Journal the interest and keeping it alive. But then when it came back here in 98, I believe it was, then is when I first became somewhat involved, started getting my feet wet, yeah. And then 99, 2000, Floyd Bontrager and I really
from Middlebury?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, Floyd was involved from the very beginning.
Uh-huh.
And he and I worked together very closely for a number of years to establish, first of all, the board of directors and some kind of bylaws, and we were very informal about the whole thing. I mean, we didn't really involve any legal entities for a while. But yeah, so yeah, of course, it was pretty shaky for a number of years, and even the first few years that I was involved in 98, 99, 2000, and on, it was sort of touch and go for a while. So it's been
in terms of it being fiscally solid.
Right.
Uh-huh.
Right. Could it cover its expenses?
Right.
But it was great to be a part of the group that figured out what could work, came up with a plan, and see it come to maturity and fruition and to where it is now. That's been a great experience. The kind of farming that we were talking about, based on earlier practices, and probably incorporating some, being able to, so the advantage of being a farmer in this period of time is that the practices of the 20s and 30s that you describe are still, viable and not that far in the past that we can maybe reclaim some of them. But then we also have the opportunity of picking and choosing the practices and what's become available since that time to now to incorporate it into what we're doing now. We don't have to necessarily just go back to a period of time earlier. And yet we don't have to turn our backs on it either. We don't have to disparage it as not being valuable. If we could respectfully just bring everything that we've learned and bring it all together, I think we have a really good future ahead of us.
You're pretty optimistic about the future for the small farmer, the draft animal farmer?
Well, I'm an optimistic person, but I don't know.
You recognize opportunities.
Yeah.
The question is whether we grasp them.
Right. Yeah. And as far as a real resurgence of draft animal power on farms, to the extent that it's noticeable and not just quaint, I'm not sure. I think it's really, really important, really worthwhile to work at it, and to, like you do, promote it, and the more stories that you can tell about people who are doing it successfully and evaluating success in more than just financial terms.
Right.
Obviously it has to self-sustain, and that's the bottom line. It has to sustain the family, it has to sustain the animals, it has to sustain, it has to be viable. But the level, the level of profit, so to speak, has to be, I think, looked at in terms of what we talked about a little bit earlier, and that is, satisfaction with life, happiness, contentment, and a feeling of having done something important, being part of something important. That, I think, is, what it all comes down to.
Have you been surprised with the growth of Horse Progress Days?
Yes.
In terms of its scale? In terms
To
of
some
its attendance?
Yes, I have. I never would have imagined that it could have grown to this level, especially given the fact that we've always been very careful about how we promote it. Just for example, when it was here in 2011, the local newspaper called me a day or two before the event and said, maybe 3 or 4 days, and said, we heard about this big event that's coming and we think we could do a story for it. We'd like to do a story. Well, great, okay, promotion, right? Free promotion. We think we might be able to help your attendance. And I said, I would much prefer if you came and did a story after the fact, because we are very careful about, we have a targeted audience. And I'm very aware of tourist presence, because we're in a very heavily supported tourist area here because of the Amish here in Lancaster County. And we could double even or triple our attendance now, probably, if we promoted it into the general public, but that would defeat our purposes. And so given the fact, that we have avoided that, we've also been offered TV coverage from time to time, and we've always turned it down. I've been in situations where I'm the only non-Amish person in the group, of maybe sometimes as many as 6 or more, 12 people.
Right.
And I have ideas, like, oh, I put this great idea out there, and suddenly everybody's looking down at the table, and nobody's picking up on it, and I'm talking a little bit more, and it just doesn't go anywhere. And then I'm sorry, this is not fitting the Amish way.
Right.
I apologize. I didn't think about it. So I've had to do that several times. Talking about Horse Progress Days, the thing that I really wouldn't have anticipated was the international flavor that has developed. One of my biggest disappointments for this summer is that we had a what I think is a pretty important, at least potentially, program in place for an exchange between a Tanzanian couple who were approved to come, whose costs were covered with Mennonite Central Committee and Horse Progress Days working together to actually do some hands-on work on a piece of planter, possibly a no-till planter, or building on some work that Tillers International has been working on. That to me is incredibly stimulating, and I'm very disappointed that had to be put aside. But even aside from that, the international relationships and friendships and interests that Horse Progress Days has developed has been really amazing. And the reason that this is important on the human level is because it reflects it's a not even just a metaphor, but it's an actual example of what happens in the earth. The godly system that we were talking about earlier, and the diversity of microbes that help the natural world to function, the world that we take for granted. When we engage in cross-cultural experiences and learn to appreciate one another and embrace the gifts that all the other cultures and ethnicities bring to our world, then we're being respectful of the system, godly systems, I believe. No, the only thing I would say about my approach to Horse Progress Days has always been one of emphasizing that at Horse Progress Days, it's a forum that is meant to demonstrate new equipment. There's lots of old-time farm days that are really great, and that this event actually springs from or is built on things that have been discovered in previous years.
Right.
But Horse Progress Days is for new innovations in animal-powered equipment. This, to me, is also very intriguing, that the fact that we could do this kind of demonstration with the level of interest and success that we have in this day and age, focused on animal power, is just amazing.
This program is available for purchase. To order your copy, please call 319-362-3027 or visit www.ruralheritage.com. Rural Heritage is a bi-monthly magazine dedicated to draft animal farming and logging, as well as other aspects of our rich rural heritage. It is published by Mishka Press, which also offers a complete line of back-to-the-land books, DVDs, and calendars. Call or write for a catalog or subscription information, or visit our website at www.ruralheritage.com.